Hello and welcome to another episode of The Charity Show, the podcast for charity insiders by charity insiders. Please give us a follow on your usual podcast platform when you get a chance to do so. And here's what's coming up in episode 6.
It was really posh, and I felt really kind of out of place, and we felt really out of place because I think they were winding us up a little bit because the actual staff there were like, okay, let's have a bit of fun with these charity representatives, and they were like, just sit on your hands, don't say anything, don't cough. If you need to go to the loo, we'll escort you out. And I think by about halfway through the day, we realised that they were, our legs were getting pulled.
I was in this room with a load of burly firefighters and guys who probably went into it quite sceptical. And we sat there and the lady was at the front playing some nice gentle music and just sort of talking to us for half an hour. And within about 20 minutes, I'd say 3/4 of the room were asleep.
I think like with the smaller charities that often the strategy doesn't exist. And I know that I do a lot of pro bono work supporting like small grassroots organisations, and they want to do a lot of good and they want to do it quickly, and they perhaps don't have the skills or the resources to put that strategy in place.
That journey, that chug up to 13,000 feet is absolutely terrifying. Once you're in there, in the air, you can't do anything about it. You're only going to go one way, aren't you?
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of The Charity Show with me, Tim Beynon, Head of Marketing Engagement at the Firefighters Charity.
And me, Piers Townley, PR Manager at the Brain Tumour Charity.
It's almost school holiday time, Piers. We're almost there, touching distance to the school holidays. Have you got your Speedos and sunscreen packed?
I like to think I have, but weirdly, it's gone ridiculously busy at the charity for a number of reasons. Usually for us, this is kind of a quieter time. August can sometimes be a bit barren in terms of things going on, but no, there's a certain athletic event happening in Paris at the end of July, and our high-profile supporter Tom Daly, as a diving pair, will be taking part of that. So there's been a bit of comms work and reaching out to Tom. He's supported the charity for many years, so we have a little bit of a comms and a social media plan for keeping an eye on how he does, and fingers crossed he goes and brings back gold for Team GB. That's obviously happening over August. And then we have our summer appeal also online now from the 22nd to the 29th of July. This is part of the Big Give, where donations have doubled. This is something that a lot of charities work with. We've been doing this for many years. We have a winter appeal and we have a summer appeal now as well. So that's all kicking off as well. And then alongside that, we've been part of the Bank of England charity auction. Now the new pound notes that come out with King Charles III's head on them, a selection of those have been auctioned off recently, and we went along to the £20 auction, the £20 note auction at Spinks, which is a really posh auction house, hundreds of year old auction house in Bloomsbury, where the very low serial number ones of those were being auctioned off, and Chinese buyers were bidding in, Hong Kong buyers. Some of the lower serial numbers were going through over £8,000 each. And then particularly with the number 18, which is a lucky number for collectors and for Chinese collectors as well. So that will raise a huge amount of money for 10 charities. We're one of those 10. So at the end of July, we find out what that sum is. And it just seems to be a cascade of things. So while I've got one eye on the summer holidays, I've got also get through the next bit, and our comms team and the wider charity's got to get through the next few weeks, which is just so busy, but so really good. And then we can relax and cheer on the divers and cheer on Tom Daly as he goes ahead.
Yeah, I love the auction thing. You were sending me some messages as it was going on, saying that you were sat there terrified about scratching your nose in case you accidentally bid thousands of pounds for a £20 note.
But it was really posh, and I felt really kind of out of place, and we felt really out of place because I think they were winding us up a little bit because the actual staff there were like, okay, let's have a bit of fun with these charity representatives, and they were like, just sit on your hands, don't say anything, don't cough. If you need to go to the loo, we'll escort you out. And I think by about halfway through the day, we realised that they were, our legs were getting pulled. But it was, as an inside thing to see, a really unusual experience, and amazing to see all of this being done for as I say, 10 incredible charities. So, yeah.
I mean, I never knew that happened. But it's amazing principle to basically sell money to make money. That's great. Yeah.
Well, you were seeing these bids coming in. It was frenzied at times as well. So obviously this is a glimpse into a world that's beyond my experience, that people are after specific serial numbers, and notes and coins are huge in that world. A little glimpse into another world.
Yeah. My world of bidding doesn't go any further than eBay. That's pretty much me.
I didn't go to the toilet. I didn't cough. I did sit on my hands. I wasn't moving an inch.
Well done. Well done. Well done. Yeah, I think we say it every week, don't we? It's a busy time at the moment, but it's a funny time, I think, for charities. This kind of pre-summer holidays time, and August is a strange month. Like you, the firefighter charity, we just launched our summer appeal as well, so that's ongoing at the moment. But August is a strange time because everyone is away. No charities really plan a great deal for August, so it's a bit of a sort of dead month, really, and we sort of find that. But I know from a comms perspective and a marketing perspective, it's a sort of false dawn, if you like, because I know that we'll come back in September and October, November are absolutely mental. So there's lots going on. I know I've seen the plans. I know there's lots going on. So it feels quieter now, but I don't want to be lulled into that false sense of security that it's going to be like that for a while, because it won't. Because I know that come back from summer, it's going to be mad. So there's lots going on there, in the not too distant future. But we've got a fascinating episode coming up. We're going to be talking to Vicki Beevers, Chief Executive of the Sleep Charity, and amazing because she's won the Strategic Leader of the Year. So we're going to be talking to her about that and about the great work of the Sleep Charity. So that's all coming up in a minute. But on the subject of sleep, Piers, are you a good sleeper? Do you sleep well?
No, never have done.
No?
I always found myself a very light sleeper. Easily woken up, can't get back. Now with a new puppy, that has all changed as well. So I'm
Even less sleep.
I'm interested to see the perspective and also the highlight that Vicki is going to bring on the charity, which I didn't know nothing about. And she's got some statistics there about the amount of people that they support and the practical and campaigning tips they do. It's really a really fascinating thing.
It is quite a really important subject, and I know a little bit about it through. Well, personally, I sleep quite well. I've always slept quite well, so I've never had much of an issue with it. But at the firefighter charity, a lot of firefighters experience quite severe sleep issues as a result of many different things, but shift working impacts sleep. On-call firefighters who have to sit at night and have the pager next to their bed inevitably suffer from poor sleep as a result. And also working around trauma has an impact on your sleep as well, understandably. So a lot of firefighters really suffer with sleep issues, and that leads to poor mental health. The two are very, very closely linked. So we do a lot of work at the firefighters charity to support firefighters who are suffering with poor sleep. We hold all kinds of workshops and things like that offer support for people who are experiencing issues when it comes to sleep. And I've sat in on a couple of those. And there was one where it was basically in a darkened room, I remember, and it was amazing. It's like a sort of meditation type session. Everyone's lying on the floor. So I was in this room with a load of burly firefighters and guys who probably went into it quite skeptical. And we sat there, and the lady was at the front playing some nice gentle music and just sort of talking to us for half an hour. And within about 20 minutes, I'd say 3/4 of the room were asleep. There's like guys snoring next to me and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't fall asleep, but it was a really incredible experience. And coming out of that, lots of the guys there were saying how amazing it was, and how they'll take those techniques into their own lives going forward. So yeah, I know a little bit about sleep, so it'll be fascinating to find out more about that and the incredible charity that Vicki's heading up. So we'll find out a bit more about that a little bit later on. Okay, it's time again for some news headlines. What's stopped you in your tracks this week, Piers?
It's not so much stopped me in my tracks, but I do think just highlighted the ongoing saga of the Sir Tom Moore or the Captain Tom Foundation, as it's called, and the fallout from all the controversy that's surrounding that. After being set up in 2020, the headlines have been hit. His daughter, Hannah, and her husband, Colin, have only just recently, earlier on this month, been disqualified from being charity trustees for 10 years and 8 years respectively. And it's put a kind of a dark cloud around such a fantastic amount of fundraising and a fantastic amount of awareness that was happening during the pandemic. The foundation, he raised 38.9 million way back during the COVID times, but since his death in 2021, the foundation has just been mired in controversy. But it's just, the whole affair just seems sad. It's a sad epitaph for a wonderful life and a wonderful charity, and it just shows, I think, how the fickle nature of opinion is changing when facts have come out and was there this and was there that. As I say, I'm not going to speculate too much, but yeah, the whole thing is still making the headlines.
It's horrible, isn't it? I agree with you, and I remember the whole nation was so uplifted by his story and what he did, and the incredible worldwide support he got. I remember seeing a shot of a village hall, I think that was full of cards, full of people sending cards of congratulations and thanks to him. An amazing guy, an amazing amount of money he raised, and that legacy has been tarnished, isn't it? It's very sad.
It has, and I think that will carry on as well. If we have any other big events or any big headline arresting situations, will that dent public confidence? Has that changed perception in the third sector and charitable foundations? I think the ramifications will eke out as time goes on.
Yeah, sad one. I've got an interesting story this week, and it follows on really from our episode 4 guest, Zoe Anna. So Zoe released her 2024 Charity Digital Skills Report recently, early this month, and gives us, as she said in the episode, and anyone who wants to listen can listen back on to episode 4, and Zoe speaks a bit about it in that episode. But she released this report, and there's lots of fascinating insight in there, and I'd certainly recommend everyone goes to charitydigitalskills.co.uk to have a proper read through what is quite a lengthy and detailed report. And it just basically gives an overview of how we as a sector are performing when it comes to digital. And it's not just about AI, it's about how our approach to sort of digital transformation as a whole, and how charities are embracing all those opportunities that present themselves through digital. It's largely positive, although there are certainly some things to pick out. And just looking at some of the headlines that Zoe recognises in the reports, 50% of charities have a digital strategy, which I actually think in this day and age is quite low. I would have thought that many more than 50%.
Is surprising, isn't it, that one?
Yeah, I was quite surprised by that. 61% of charities are currently using AI in their day-to-day work or operations. Now, that surprised me, because I'm actually surprised that it's as much as that, given the fact that it's still such an emerging technology. But I'm not quite sure what using AI actually means. Does that mean people are just trying it with a little bit of chat GPT, or are they going into much more detail? Have a read of the report, and the detail is certainly going to be in there. But yeah, so lots of charities using AI, which is encouraging. 72% of small charities are struggling digitally due to squeezed finances. Now, that really interested me, because I think it kind of shows that there's a bit of a digital divide there between big and small charities, and that's probably inevitable, given the fact that money comes into play, and the more you have, the more you're likely to invest and have at your disposal. But it kind of makes you wonder how small charities can ever sort of keep pace and compete with big charities when it comes to digital. So hopefully there's something that small charities could learn there, or certainly Zoe, I remember when we talked to her, was very keen to emphasise there's tools and things and that small charities can use that don't cost the earth, and that there's certainly ways to embrace things like AI without having to spend huge amounts of money. So hopefully there's lessons there. But I think it's a fantastic report. So congratulations to Zoe on a great launch as well. I sat in on the webinar, which was fascinating, and I highly recommend everybody take some time to go to the website. We'll put the links in the show notes as well, and has a good read through of the Charity Digital Skills Report 2024. Strategy. It's one of those buzzwords that seemingly flies around most third sector offices. The roadmap to the future, the vision, mission and direction, the glossy document that gets put together every 3 years and then put on a shelf, never to be looked at again. We're all told that we need to think and work strategically, that decisions need to be driven by strategy, that projects can only be given the green light if they align to our strategy, that we must live and breathe our strategy. But what does all that mean in real terms, and what does good strategy and a good strategic leader actually look like? Well, Vicki Beevers, Chief Executive of the Sleep Charity, should know. She won the Charity Comms Strategic Leader of the Year award for her approach to leading the charity that she founded. So, Piers and I sat down with Vicki to find out how she helps her employees and teams to realise the full potential of the Sleep Charity, and how they all, together, help their service users to get a good night's sleep. Vicki, great to see you. Thank you for joining us on the show today. Got to ask you first of all, how are you, and did you sleep well last night?
I'm very, very well, thank you. And yeah, I had a pretty decent night's sleep, I've got to say.
Excellent. Good stuff. What about you, Piers? Did you sleep well last night?
No, not last night, but I'm going to blame some foxes in the garden.
Okay.
They
fair
make a
enough.
hell of a racket.
Fair enough. That does happen occasionally. Vicky, can you tell us a little bit about your background, perhaps first off? Just give us a little bit of a flavour of where you've come from and how you've ended up at the sleep charity.
Yeah, so my background's actually in teaching. So I qualified as a teacher a long time ago now, and I taught in special schools for many years. I taught children who've got quite challenging behaviours as well. And I sort of fell into sleep really by not getting any. That's where it started. So my eldest son did not sleep well. And I expected it right at the beginning when he was a baby, but this continued for many years. And I found that there was sort of very little support available, or even very little concern about it, despite the fact it had a huge impact on me, it had a huge impact on him. So I started to research sleep, and I use the word research now. I didn't realise that's what I was doing. I started to obsess about sleep, to look for ways to improve it. And I sort of came across using a behavioural approach to sleep. It worked, which was miraculous. And I wanted to help other people. And I had the idea, I'll set up a charity, thinking, you set up a charity, people give you money. And I was so naive. So that was back in 2012.
And a long way you've come ever since then. As everyone we talk to always says, setting up a charity is never easy. There's lots of red tape and lots of dramas along the way and tough times to go through. So I imagine it's been a challenge along the way. But along that journey, you've also picked up the Strategic Leader of the Year award, which we noticed and thought we've got to talk to Vicky about that. Sounds fantastic. What does that mean to you personally and also to the organisation?
Yeah, so for me personally, well, I was absolutely astounded, shocked. I think sometimes you get imposter syndrome a little bit as well, when you're leading a small charity particularly, and when it's a charity that you've founded and set up. So when I found out I was in the final, I looked at all the finalists and I was like, they're proper strategic leaders. and there's me, it was kind of making lots of mistakes along the way and trying to learn from it. So for me, it was a shock, but it's incredible because to have your hard work acknowledged publicly like that, it's a good boost, for your confidence, for your morale, but also for the organisation, for the sleep charity. We know that things are really tough out there at the moment for charities, and it's these sort of awards that can give funders confidence, that we're going to spend their money wisely. There is like a really well thought out strategy behind the work that we're doing. So it's brilliant on both levels.
We all get imposter syndrome. Don't worry about that. It happens to us all, definitely.
It definitely does. Well, I suppose getting that award though is kind of like a badge of integrity for what you're doing and what the charity does. Vicky, could you summarise the sleep charity's strategy? What lies at the heart of it for supporting people with sleep issues?
Yeah, so in terms of our strategy, we start by looking at what is our overall vision, and like the vision that I've always had is that we need to empower people with sleep education, because if we know about sleep, we can then recognise why we might not be sleeping so well, and we can recognise what we need to put into place so that we can improve our sleep. So that's where it all sort of comes from. And then around there, we've got the strategy which sort of looks at things from different levels. So it's very much around having a tiered approach to intervention and recognising that people are individuals. And so first of all, when we look at our beneficiaries, it's how will they access the support? And that's in many different ways. You've got the beneficiaries who prefer written text, you've got beneficiaries who prefer podcasts, you've got those who actually want to speak to somebody. So it's developing our strategy so that it can support as many people as possible from that respect. And then also it's developing our strategy so that as a small charity, we can reach as many people as possible by training other people. So we do a lot of train the trainer work so that once we do get some funding, we can develop a training offering that can then be sold out so it's sustainable, but also it educates the professionals out there that are actually meeting people on a daily basis who are saying, I'm not sleeping, what can I do about it? And then another element of the strategy is around the research. So it sounds very strange to say this, but we still don't know all that much about sleep, even though it's so important. So there's lots more research that needs to be done. And we work with a wide range of academic institutions to sort of work, around that. And that's fascinating. And it also helps to underpin our evidence base. And then the final sort of component of the strategy is around campaigning. And again, it sounds crazy to say it, but sleep is not given, the same sort of footing as things like health, diet, mental well-being. Yeah, actually, if we don't get enough of it, we die, which is like not a very cheery message, but it's true. It can actually kill you. Sleep deprivation can kill you. And it has all sorts of dreadful effects on the mind, the body. So we do a lot of campaigning as well to try to raise awareness nationally. We've got a manifesto out at the moment. We're back in the House of Commons in September. So we're trying to come from it from different angles, really.
It's true, though, Vicki, that smaller charities and the very small charities, having a clear strategy is vital. It's the only way they're going to survive and raise their voices up. But, the larger charities, the big, giant ones also need a clear strategy. What do you think are the dangers of not having a clear strategy after a charity?
Yeah, I think there are so many dangers because you can drift away from your mission quite easily. So it can be tempting, especially when there's little funding coming out, that you can jump on funding and try to make your sort of projects, your service delivery fit funding, which actually isn't about your priority. So I think it's really important that you've got a strategy, you've got a clear idea of what you're aiming at and what you're focusing on, so that you can really focus on that and not let yourselves drift. Having said that, I think there's going to be some flexibility. So although we've got sort of a 3-year strategic plan, it may be that actually sometimes we start to do things that we're down in year 3 because it may be that things have changed within the news or there's been new research. So it's not sort of sticking to it so rigidly that you miss really important opportunities that come along as well. So it's having that flexible approach is important too.
Yeah, there's so much to consider, isn't there? But obviously, strategy is something that it's a buzzword that fills the sector, and every charity says, "Oh, we're working to our strategy. We've got a 3-year plan. We've got a 5-year plan." But where do you think some charities fall down when it comes to strategy? Were there any sort of fundamental things? You mentioned strategic drift and people not sticking to their plans. Is that at the heart of where charities fall down, or are there other things that perhaps charities are just making fundamental mistakes when it comes to strategy?
Well, I think like with the smaller charities, that often the strategy doesn't exist. And I know that I do a lot of pro bono work supporting like small grassroots organisations, and they want to do a lot of good and they want to do it quickly, and they perhaps don't have the skills or the resources to put that strategy in place. So I think, a lot of it's about being under-resourced, but actually it's got to be a priority because it's important that everyone's working to do the same thing. And I think it's probably around communication as well. So it's important that everybody knows what's being worked towards, that everyone has an input into it so that there's some ownership of the strategy. The team, whether that's teams of volunteers, trustees, whether it's, employees, have had an input into the strategy, so it belongs to us all. And we've got a team meeting next week, and I've just been printing out like our strategic aims again. And what we do is we review them. So we break them down into the business plan so that you can see the flow of the work, so it's meaningful. And I rag rate everything throughout the sort of financial year, so we can see how we're progressing towards different elements of the strategy. So it's really quick and easy. You can see it's red, we need to work on that, or consider if it should stay in the strategy this year. It's green, it's done, amber's the stuff that's ongoing. So I think it's having systems in place is really important as well. And they don't have to be complex, simple, because we've got enough complex work to do in the charity sector right now.
Yeah, there's always lots of complex stuff. Tell me as well, I mean, how do you get your staff and your teams to live by the strategy as well? And by that, I suppose, I mean, it's quite easy, isn't it, for a charity to publish a strategy document at the beginning of a 3-year period or a 5-year period and say, here's our strategy, let's go and work towards it. But how do you actually ensure that your teams are embracing that in their everyday work and that they're living it? And it's not just something that gets looked at once and put in a drawer or pinned up on a notice board and forgotten about. How do you make sure that teams live and breathe it every day?
That's a great question. I think it's around the values as well that underpin the strategy. So, recapping on the values, and we're going to go through a period where we're going to do some more work on that at a sleep charity, because we probably need to refresh things a little bit. We've got a lot of new board members in as well. And so we need to look at, are our values still current, which we do through the board meetings, but also through team meetings, and how are we displaying these? And then when we think about the work that we're doing, linking it back into the values as well. So where does this fall? And also our behaviours. I think behaviour is so important, and, having a positive workplace culture. And it's okay putting that we've got these values on documents, but it's like having to live and breathe it and reminding people these are our values. And actually, if we're working on that project with that company, do they align with our values? Is there a mismatch? And if there is, should we really be doing these things? So it's not just thinking about the charitable objects that we've got to, consider. It's also thinking about the values and our own integrity as an organisation. And I think referencing them a lot, in conversation, this doesn't align with our values. It's not the way that we behave is important.
It's fascinating about how obviously culture is so important. It's such a part of strategy, isn't it? The living and breathing that culture and organisational culture just as important as the actual strategic direction.
Yeah, I was just going to say something about teamwork, then realised I just drunk out of a mug that says "The Boss." That was bought for me by one of the team. It wasn't a self-made purchase. I also think that it is part of the team building that's so key. So we have a couple of days a year where we really invest in that, and we get the team together, because we are scattered about across the country now. So it's important that when we do come together, we spend some real quality time looking at the strategy, which is what we're going to be doing next week, but also that we spend some quality time getting to know each other better and having some fun and building those relationships of trust. I think that's key, and I think it's harder since people have been working from home.
Yes, I was just going to touch on that, Vicky, because there are certain big stumbling blocks that can throw a charity strategy off course, and obviously COVID was one of them. A huge blow to teamwork, to the culture. So how would you go about, or have you maintained the ability to be agile in your strategy and your approach to what you do?
Yeah, I mean, COVID completely wrecked my strategy at that point, which was to really rely on the training to bring in the funding. And at that point, we were delivering face-to-face training, mainly to NHS staff, it's got to be said. And it at the time, it seemed a pretty solid thing to be doing, because that was growing and the income was growing. And even with hindsight, I couldn't have predicted that COVID would have occurred and that would have been wiped out overnight. And so that was where the quick thinking had to come in, and having to change and move the strategy around so that we could then look at sort of the digital strategy really, and how could we continue to bring in that income stream, but do it in a very, very different way. And so that's a bit about the COVID, and it was a steep learning curve for strategy, because it taught me a lot about sort of the different income streams and not putting our legs into one basket, and making sure that money was coming in from a range of sort of different places, if at all possible. I mean, what was the second part? Because I've gone off on COVID now. Because it just brought a terrible memory back of me weeping over my laptop.
I think, do you know what? We've all been there. It was about the stumbling blocks. It was about the big events, or even the small events, that can very subtly or very dramatically throw the strategy off course. So you have to be agile, maybe as a smaller charity as well, much more agile than some of the bigger ones. How do you go about building that agility, building that resilience in your approach to being strategic and approach to what you do?
Yeah, I think for me as well, it links to the relationship with the board very strongly. So, we've got an amazing chair, and we've got a very strong relationship between myself and her. And we've got a range really of skilled trustees that we can draw on now, which is something that's built over time. Because I think going back to the early days, I was just begging anybody to be a trustee, because nobody wants to be particularly a trustee of a new organisation that, everyone's time limited. But certainly the board allowed me that agility and that sounding space and that critical friend to take ideas to it. And I think that's key. And I think the other thing that's really important is for leaders within charities to have other leaders that they can speak to share concerns with, to share ideas with, and to challenge your thinking, because it's quite easy to get stuck into a rut with your thinking and not to see things from different perspectives. It's like having that helicopter sort of view. And sometimes we're so involved with our own organisations that we can't see alternative ideas. So I think other charity leaders are a good source of support around that agile thinking as well, for me personally.
I think that touches on to what I was going to ask you next, Vicki, one of those qualities, because obviously, you've got the mug there that says the boss. You have won Strategic Leader of the Year, but, modesty aside, what qualities do you think are necessary to be a strategic leader in the third sector, in the charity sector?
Oh, I think resilience has got to be right up there, most definitely. It is such a tricky job. I think there's got to be determination. There's got to be, hard work. I also think, when we're talking about sort of coming up with new ideas and creative thinking, I always say people talk about thinking out the box. I don't even have a box. That's where my thinking is, and some of the ideas that I come up with are absolutely awful, but some are, really good. And it's having creative ideas is important too. But I think it also depends who you've got within your team. So it may be that, in one team, it's really important for a leader to have qualities that are very much around managing, the staff, managing volunteers. It may be, I think my role's a little bit different because a lot of the sleep work I actually do as well. So I'm like writing training materials, sort of very hands-on in terms of that element. So therefore we've got, other members of the staff who might look after like the HR side of things, etc. But I think it is about, resilience is a massive one right now because it's a tough job and you've got to be willing to get stuck in and do every sort of aspect and element of it, because that's just how it is.
And obviously, those qualities you want to cascade down to your senior leadership team, your SLT, and your managers. So how do you go about doing that on a day-to-day basis?
So we have supervisions, which I think are incredibly important, and I know not all organisations do this, but I think it's really good practice to have a real in-depth meet-up on a regular basis, whereby we look at things like, current work priorities, what's been occurring like in the previous few weeks, what's going to be occurring in the next few weeks, and professionally, where are you? Where do you want to be? Is there any training that we can put in? Is there any shadowing opportunities that we can put in? But also, very importantly, how are you as a human being? How are you as a person? Because we're very good in the sector at looking after people, but we're not always great at looking after ourselves and our teams. And we're soaking up a lot of stress. We're taking a much higher workload than we've probably ever taken right now. And it's important that sort of team members are looked after as well, so that they want to stay in the sector and that we can develop the skills appropriately. So, we've done all sorts of different things, like invested in things like media training for people, public speaking training. Our head of sleep's very into the outdoors, so we've invested in him being a forest school leader, for example, to look at that as an avenue that he can develop his skills around, which will also support our work within the charity.
Fantastic. Love the fact that those outdoors, that skills from outside of the workplace benefiting people in the workplace, really, really important. Of course, strategy also, or strategy inevitably brings change, but change for any organisation, not just in this third sector, sometimes can be hard. Change might mean having to pare back, having to do things differently, and that could ultimately potentially lead to restructures and redundancies, the dreaded R words. But what do you think the qualities are of a leader, if that is required and if that is necessary for the long-term sustainability of an organisation? How should you or would you lead through that kind of turbulence?
Yeah, change is always a tricky one because, it brings with it unrest, it brings with it confusion. And I think it can be the smallest of changes as well that can then that can cause disruptions, and sometimes real positive changes that can be sort of resisted by people because it doesn't feel familiar and safe. And I think it goes back to communication. So I'm a big believer in being honest about things. So if we're in tricky times, making that clear that right now it's not great financially, but this is what we're doing to put things in place to try to improve things. Having that open dialogue and the open doors policy where people can come and ask questions, and there's nothing considered to be a stupid question. If it's a question that's burning, then it needs to be asked, because otherwise what occurs is people come up with their own ideas about what may be happening behind the scenes or whatever. And again, that can cause a lot of unrest. So I believe strongly in communicating what's happening. All of our team do an email on a Friday, which goes around to everybody about what they've been doing in the week and what they're going to be doing next week, but also, very importantly, what we're doing at the weekends, just a little bit of information to share so that hopefully there's never any, terrible surprises. They're aware of what the situation always is, what the pressures are. And I think importantly, what's being done to mitigate it, because what you don't want as a member of staff is concerns that actually you're being told there's an issue, but you're not being told what's done. And I think it's important to ask them as well, have you got any ideas? How would you like us to handle this? And at times we've brought in consultants as well, to do sort of away days so that we can get everyone's points of view. And we also do sort of an anonymous staff survey so that people can give the feedback as well. And you can see when there's points of change, you can feel that unrest no matter how hard you try to mitigate against it, because it's normal, it's part of who we are to sort of get confused, concerned and resist it to a degree. And it is difficult to lead through change, but I always call everything an exciting challenge, and that's what leading through change is, which is probably really irritating actually. I've been told it is, but it's just how I view things, because otherwise you can very quickly become overwhelmed by challenges. But actually, it's an exciting challenge, and let's see what we can do about this.
Yeah, I agree. I think that transparency and communication is really important, especially from senior leaders within an organisation. The last thing you want to be seen as a senior leadership team is that you're sat in some high tower somewhere, divorced from everyone working at the coalface and dictating what's happening to them. So that transparency and openness is really vital, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Again, it goes back to the values, and we want people to know that they can speak openly, that there's a culture of respect, and also I think appreciation is really important as well. So I've had people say to me, "Oh, I saw you won an award. Oh, I don't need an award for my work." And it's like, actually, it's really nice to be appreciated, and it's not about the awards; it's about the thank yous that we give each other as a team. Appreciating each other's skills as a team is really important too.
Sure. And as a successful leader, who do you look up to? Who inspires you? Who motivates you?
Oh, so many different people. I mean, going back, it was a wonderful lady called Lizzie Jenkins, who used to work for Scope, the disability charity. And Lizzie gave me a job as a project manager, quite a few years ago now. And she was just inspirational. She was, really on the ball with the strategy and the figures, but she was also such a beautifully kind person, and she could bring out the best in people because she believed in people and she saw the skills and really honed them and gave me a lot of confidence. So I always see Lizzie as being my inspiration. But, there's so many. And I look very much at the charity sector. There's so many charity leaders that I know and really admire for lots of different reasons. But yeah, Lizzie's the one that I always come back to. So I'm forever grateful for Lizzie and her support.
That's amazing you're able to name check her, Vicki. My next question, you've kind of already answered it, because it was about measuring whether you and your SLT are doing a good job. And you said you constantly get that feedback. So I just wanted to know, I mean, it's the cliche, isn't it? It's lonely at the top. Do you worry about whether you're doing a good job and whether your direction and the way your strategy is is set up for the charity. Do you have those doubts as a CEO, as a leader?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to do the very best you can for the organisation. And I think I feel an enormous sense of responsibility, not just for the charity, but also for, all the people that we employ. This is their livelihoods as well. And so, it can be a worry at times. And again, this is where I think the board comes in as the people who you can go to and say, I'm not sure if this is working as well as it could, and am I missing something here? And I suspect that if I ever got to the point where I didn't show that level of concern, I would probably be in the wrong role, because I think it's a healthy level. So it's not that I'm all like worried about it, thankfully, because that would be a terrible advert. But I would say I've got a healthy concern, because you need to have. And I think that little, is there something that I'm missing? Is there something that we could do better? That's something that is definitely there. And I think when I see that in other charity leaders, because, I've been on the board of a lot of different sort of charities, I think that's a really important quality as well, because if you've got somebody going, this is what we're doing and I'm absolutely right, that's when things tend to not be absolutely right, because they're not listening to like the input of other people, which is what makes your strategy, so powerful.
I think there's no room for arrogance, is there, in leadership? No. It's not going to work for anybody. My last question, Vicki, thank you so much for your time today. It's been fantastic. It's been great to speak to you. But what are those sort of golden nuggets of advice that you would give anyone listening to this who is sort of maybe starting out on a leadership journey, in whatever level that might be, or might be targeting their ambition might be to lead a charity at some day, or they might be starting off in terms of setting up a charity in the same way that you did? Yeah. What would be the sort of golden nuggets of advice that you'd pass on to them?
I think getting a mentor is really important. So somebody that you can speak to from outside the organisation, where you can have that like coaching relationship. So we often don't get that, and it's something that I strongly believe in, which is why we have the supervision, having the space to be able to talk through your ideas and also to learn from other people. So, the reason that I've done a lot of pro bono work is because I've made some huge mistakes along the way, and I've learned an awful lot. And I believe that learning needs to go to some good use. And if I could help another, person who's setting up to prevent them from going through those things, then that's important. And I've had mentoring myself from people who've been much more experienced than me, and found it really valuable. And I remember, they've told me things about fundraising, and when we get to a certain point, this will start to happen. I thought, that won't happen. And they were right, it has. So learn from the experience that's surrounding the sector, and people are so generous with the time. That's the wonderful thing about the voluntary sector. People are so incredibly generous. And get connected, find information out. I do a lot of networking. I'm co-chair of the Small Charity Advisory Panel that's running now nationally. The reason I do that is because I am passionate about small charities, and actually they need advocating for, and they do such important work. But it's also the opportunities it gives me to meet people and to get even more support, from the network. You can't put a price tag on that.
Fantastic. Vicki, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day and get a good night's sleep tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, and sleep well.
In each episode of The Charity Show, we want to celebrate our sector superstars, those incredible people working, volunteering and fundraising across our sector. And you can nominate your deserving colleagues, volunteers or fundraisers. Just email us at thecharityshowpod@gmail.com or get in touch through the links in the show notes. You can even send us a voice message that we can play out in the next episode. So who's your superstar this week, Tim?
Well, I'm going to give the Firefighter charity a bit of a plug this week. Why not? And I wanted to talk about this amazing challenge for two reasons. So basically, there's a firefighter, a lady called Pip Waite, based at Swadlincote Fire Station in Derbyshire. And she's taking on an ultra marathon on a treadmill for us. So she's running 50 kilometers on a treadmill for us. That in itself is amazing. I've done a bit of treadmill running. I find it incredibly boring. I'm much more of an outdoor runner than I am a treadmill runner. But she's doing it all on a treadmill. But not only that, she's doing the whole thing while watching non-stop Fireman Sam the entire duration. So this is probably 7, 8, 9 hours worth of running, watching nothing but Fireman Sam on a big screen in front of her. So I don't know why she feels she needs to combine the two, but it's a hell of a challenge. So I really take my hat off to her for that. So the 26-year-old who is an on-call firefighter, so she also means that she's not a full-time firefighter. She also has another job. She works at Fight Station Kickboxing Gym in Church Gresley. She's been training for this feat since November. I don't know whether training means, doing a bit of running and then doing a little bit of fireman, easing herself into the Fireman Sam. I don't know, but yeah. That's an incredible challenge. So good on you, Pip. I wish you the very, very best of luck with that. And I don't envy. You're going to get that theme tune stuck in your head, aren't you? That's going
to be the one.
Oh man, that's good. So yeah, good luck, Pip. Looking forward to finding out how it goes. What about you, Piers?
I think if you're plugging the firefighters charity, Tim, then I'm going to plug the brain tumor charity as well. And it's generally beyond the brain tumor charity as well. It's for anyone who fancies jumping out of a plane this summer. It seems to be all the rage. I've had the lucky chance to have done a skydive a couple of times, but to all the skydivers out of there, I just think you are superstars, because it is a literal leap of faith, and it is absolutely terrifying as well. We've got 3 skydivers that I want to shout out to this week. 2 of them are part of our Young Ambassador program, so that's young people who are affected by brain tumor diagnosis and support all our work and campaign for us. So that's a Lucy Swatton and an Owen Sutton. They're both doing a skydive for us. And then we have another supporter, Rhiannon Rowland, who's going to be jumping 13,000 foot out of a plane in memory of a lovely little 8-year-old girl called Emily Smith, or Ems, as Rhiannon calls her, who sadly died from a brain tumour last August 2022, actually. And Rhiannon says on her site that she knew Ems very well, being her childminder. She got to see the caring, talented and confident little girl on a daily basis, along with her lovely brother, Harry. And Ems is so terribly missed, she writes, and a huge Emily-sized hole will always be left in her heart. So in memory of Ems, 13,000 foot up, Rhiannon will be jumping out of a plane. But yeah, it takes guts. It is an incredible thing to do. And I know, and we come across so many other fundraisers that are doing this. So whichever charity you're doing it for, anyone throwing themselves out of a plane this summer, we salute you.
Oh, absolutely. I can't believe you've done it twice. I didn't know that, Piers. You've done it twice. Amazing.
I'm scared of heights.
Yeah.
Don't ask me about the psychology of that. I think it's because it's an unreal distance. But that journey, that chug up to 13,000 feet is absolutely terrifying. Once you're in the air, you can't do anything about it. You're only going to go one way, aren't you?
Well, I've never done it, but my dad is was a parachute instructor. So I've probably never done it because I think he's broken his legs more times than I can count. So that's probably why I haven't done it.
That's not a good sell.
But
so that's it for this episode. A huge thanks to Vicki for waking us all up with some fascinating insights into strategy. What have we got coming up over the next few weeks, Tim?
Well, there's plenty to keep people amused over the summer holes. So if you're sitting by the pool, why not tune in to find out how the sector is faring under the new government, as well as why charities should be turning to the corporate world for marketing expertise. And remember, you can tell us what you think of our guests or suggest someone for us to speak to by getting in touch with the show. You can also send us a voice message. The links to everything are in the show notes.
Absolutely. And don't forget, there are loads of ways you can get involved in future episodes too. Share your news, tell us about your latest innovations, events or campaigns, or tell us what you'd like to cover.
That's right, you can get in touch through the links in the show notes, as I just said, or email us at thecharityshowpod@gmail.com. And don't forget, we always want to hear about your superstars too, so nominate someone outstanding for a shout out.
And in the meantime, please follow us on your usual podcast platform and leave us a review, both of which will help other charity folks to find the show.
So that's it for another episode. Take care, and we'll see you soon.